comes out.
Wave, yeah, jazz hands.
Hi guys.
Hi everybody.
How are you doing?
Good, thanks. Yeah. I think we should tell everyone what we did about 5 minutes ago.
Yes.
1, 2, 3. On 3.
1, 2, 3.
Woo! This isn't Iron Brew. It's Magners. It's the only thing I had in, I'm afraid.
Right, Nina.
Well,
Fooled you all. I wasn't drinking at all. No, I'm it's fine.
So Deb gave us the very good idea that actually this is our lunchtime chat all together,
Yes.
and we should celebrate and enjoy it. And so we're all raising a glass to each other and cheers.
It was quite funny because I sat down with a glass of wine and everybody else was like, oh gosh, no. And then literally within 5 minutes, all three of these other women had disappeared off. And all I could hear was the sounds of clinking and glasses. And nobody told them alcohol. They did take a lot of encouragement.
If we were having a girls' lunch, though, we would definitely all be drinking. So
Yeah.
That old rubbery arm that we have, it's very rubbery. We can be persuaded to do all sorts.
Yeah.
In about 2 seconds flat. There's the coffee. There's my lovely Nespresso I made.
Yes. So there's options.
And then,
yeah. Exactly. But yeah, everyone out there, if you want to join us, please do.
If you're able.
My auntie Christine's come on, everybody.
Oh, hi.
hi, Christine.
Hi, Auntie Christine.
And it's great to see you all out there. Thank you so much for joining us. And especially thank you, Carmel and Debbie, for joining us today as well. For so much to chat with you guys, and especially with Charlotte as well, because you all have such a history together, don't you?
She's our mama bear.
Yeah.
She's our mama bear.
Oh, I don't know about that.
We can't talk about it or we have to kill you.
Yeah.
The things that we
Secret.
know, Mel, the things we know about our editor Charlotte.
Sworn to secrecy.
I could write a book. I could.
I'm sure I've given you enough material to go in some of your books.
Between us, we would have quite a few storylines, wouldn't we? If we
In fact, I think one of my most common edits for both of you is like commenting in the margin, like, "Oh my god, I've done this," or "This reminds me so much of me," or "Yes, I can relate."
Basically, Charlotte, are you saying you're the star? You're the inspiration for all
Oh my god, no way. No way. I think it's all just about how relatable your books are, though. Really, and that's why readers love them, I think, because we've all been in funny, crazy, sad situations sometimes, and when you see these characters on the page, you think, oh god, I'm not the only one.
Yeah, and I think they all do really stupid things as well, don't they? Like we all do. They all make mistakes, and they all get drunk, and they all say inappropriate stuff. It's not like normally in books and films, quite often the women are so perfect, aren't they? And then afterwards you find yourself thinking, why can't I be like that? Who's being together and always says the right thing, instead of thinking of the right thing to say like 3 days later when you go, I should have said that. So I think if you write books about women who do the same stupid stuff the rest of us do, it's just easier to get along with them, isn't it? And Charlotte, I definitely, we've had, and with Carmel, quite a few extremely drunken nights out. There's definitely some material. I think Charlotte calls it author care.
Oh yeah, it's author care. That McDonald's in Birmingham, Debbie, was definitely author care. And the Burger King, Dublin's Burger King, Carmel.
It always seems to end up though, because usually what happens is you go to these lovely author events and don't eat anything because you're just rushing. Usually for me, I'm getting off the flight and rushing, and then you go and you drink lots. Okay, no, we don't drink lots. We drink one drink carefully. No, we drink lots, and then at the end, at about 2 a.m, we're like, Charlotte, where can we go get food? It's just really hard in London, in particular. I find there's nowhere open for a dirty kebab at 2
Oh my god! How did I forget? Do you remember that?
Chinese?
The Chinese. Okay, so we were leaving. Yeah, we were leaving the HarperCollins party, and we were in Soho.
Charlotte, we got kicked out of the Ivy. We were the last people.
We were
to leave the Ivy.
Oh,
and the doorman basically shunted us down those stairs, and out we went, and we were starving. And
we're like
took us to this brilliant Chinese, like like a sort of fast food Chinese place.
Well,
really
it looked quite like it didn't look the nicest from the outside, I would say. And it was really small, wasn't it?
was.
The food, but it kind of just appeared like a mirage.
It was.
Everywhere was closed, and we were like, "Oh, we really want to try and eat." And then all of a sudden, there it was. And we were like, "Oh, it's the only place open. Let's do it."
Meant to be.
The food was amazing.
It was.
So the three of us, like,
In our fancy frocks.
we're all, you know, tall, curvy ladies on these tiny little
table.
Yes.
The tables were so, like, literally they were pressed up against all of our boobs, like our boobs, just like this Formica
my
table.
God.
Like they were made for people of a smaller, like they definitely weren't made for the 5 foot, 9, 10
Yes.
curvy lady anyhow. But we
Yeah.
loved the food. I remember
It
we
was
looked
good.
so out there, didn't we? They were giving us these looks because we were quite glam as well. We were dressed
Yeah.
up in our Sunday best, and we'd had a few drinks, so we were giddy. And there we were.
Crammed onto these tiny little benches, like a pack of cats prowling for food.
Classy birds.
Charlotte, when you and I went out for a meal in Carnaby Street,
Oh,
last year, I suppose, I can't even remember. But we went to the restaurant, and I went in. I got there first and went to get to the table. And due to my statuesque and Amazonian qualities, otherwise known as being fat, I couldn't fit behind the table in the booth. So I had to go and sit outside. And Carmel, your book, Carmel's book, My Pear-Shaped Life, it just deals with all these issues and all these, like, really, I mean, when I'm telling the story, it sounds funny, and it is funny, but it's also like really quite humiliating and makes you feel deeply sad about yourself, you know.
The amount of times my boobs have knocked like the condiments off a table as I've tried to go fast.
Me too. I have a big spatial awareness problem with my arse.
Yeah.
I just always forget how enormous it is. So like, I've been known to like knock over entire tables full of pints just with the power of my arse. It's just terrible, really.
Oh, stop.
But that's, as you were saying, it's like you find it funny, and you can write them as funny moments as well, but they're also very, very relatable moments. And I guess have you used all these sorts of fun experiences in both your writing to create your characters ultimately?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think like when I read Carmel's, there's moments where I just go, yeah, that's happened to me, or that kind of thing. Definitely. I think it's easy to spot it if you're not writing from an authentic place.
Yeah.
Definitely.
No, sorry.
No, you finish. You go.
I was just going to say, I agree, especially with My Pear-Shaped Life. I think we've talked about this before, Carmel, but that scene in the airport where she's a bit hot and sweaty, and she's using a tissue to try and, get rid of the sweat. I was like, God, I've done that. Airports, like restaurant toilets, like especially if I've had to like rush somewhere because I'm always late as well. So then the tissues come out. Oh my God, the coffee shop used to do these amazing things called papier poudre, and they were basically a little pack of like what was essentially blotting paper for your face. So if you were shiny and sweaty, you could just like dab them. I think they stopped doing them.
I know, there's nothing worse. I mean, we've all kind of had moments like that, but definitely that scene in the airport, and then afterwards, Greta, who's the central character they're talking about, who has that moment, she's actually on her way. She's an aspiring actress and on her way to a very important audition. And she's completely, if you've done any kind of commutes through London, like it's different than it is because I live in the country here in Ireland. And you've got that lovely breeze all the time, and then when I go to London, it's so by the time I do my flight, it's planes, trains and automobiles. The tube gets me, and the tube every time. But actually I was actually on my way to a meeting in London, a book related meeting, and I remember I'd done the whole thing. I traveled since early morning. It was in the summer, and by the time I got off the tube, I was literally a hot mess. I was such a hot mess, and I only had one little packet of tissues in my handbag, and I was trying to mop myself down, and it was exactly what happened to Greta. I needed a bigger tissue basically, And I put that I put a bit of humor into that scene actually when she's doing the audition, because she's so embarrassed, which I was. And I actually said this to the people I was meeting, because I was like, I think I need a bigger boat, that Brody line from Jaws. And I put it into the book because I had actually used that. So that was really autobiographical for me, that moment. But I do think, that's where readers like that, you can't pretend. If you're going to write about an overweight woman, you've got to put in the good, the bad, and the ugly. And if you don't do that, it's not coming from a place of authenticity, and I think readers then won't relate. So I think
absolutely, Carmel.
Yeah, and I think that what I'm kind of glad about is that that I have people who've said to me that they've read those scenes and related, as we've just spoken about. But equally, I've had readers say to me, I never thought of it like that. And I think that's just as important, that you get to see what the world looks like from someone else's eyes, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just in the one thing of like Greta is kind of me now. And then in the Comfort Food Cafe books, Debbie, there's Sherry Moon, who is, how old is she? Because in my head, she's like, I don't know, 60s, but I think she's actually a lot older, because she's just,
older than that,
she feels like she's so full of life, but she's described as this tall Amazonian older woman, like life and soul of the party.
She's gorgeous.
But no, like, yeah, but you can tell, like, she probably was Greta at some point in her life, and then has like grown, or had a Greta moment at least, but now you find her and she's just so comfortable with herself and in her own body and in her own skin.
Yeah, and I think with the cafe books, a lot of the sort of undertone, whatever the different plots are, it's about people, women mainly, becoming comfortable in their own skin and becoming comfortable in their own lives and becoming comfortable with their own flaws. And that's kind of one of the things that makes people like them, isn't it? And that's one of the hardest things it is to do, isn't it? I mean, I've been doing yoga every day of this lockdown. I've been doing yoga with Adrian.
I tried that and I only did 2 days.
I finished my 31 day yesterday.
Amazing!
So I was quite pleased with that. But then I still found myself just sort of lying there thinking, oh yes, so what? You still can't do half of it, and look at the state of you, and just being so self-critical. And I think we all do that. We don't live like that constantly, or we'd be utterly miserable, but we all have those moments, don't we, where we're so critical of ourselves, and like moments where people can point to your achievements from the outside in and say, look what you've done, it's amazing. But you can just look at yourself and just feel really sort of about it, And I think that's something that as women we're really, I don't know, I mean, I'm sure there's many complex reasons why we're like that, but a lot of women are like that, especially when they're younger. And I do think we're always a work in progress. And I find as I get older, I get a little bit better. I get a bit more forgiving of myself, a bit more tolerant of myself, and I learn how to say no a bit better, and all of these sorts of things. But I think that is like one of the best and worst things about women. It's terrible that we do this to ourselves, but it's great that we can bond about it and laugh at it.
I agree. And one of the things I gave one of the things I gave Greta, right, and it was something she has to do in the book. Again, it's not really a spoiler, but for every negative thing she thinks in her head, she has to think of a positive thing to balance it. And when I wrote the book and I gave that to her, I thought, I need to do that too. So that's what I do now. So I actually, if I think something negative, I make myself say something loud, nice about myself. And it's a really odd thing to do because, as you said, Debbie, from a young age, that voice has come backwards and forwards. I think it's the volume of it depends on where we are in our lives, and sometimes the volume's been loud, sometimes it's been on zero. But for me, that's what I try and do now. And so I think everyone can do that. Like literally, if you think something negative about yourself, just stop and say something positive.
We're harder on ourselves than we are to anybody else, aren't we? I mean,
Definitely.
If somebody was saying to you, Carmel, the things that I say to myself, I'd be absolutely furious. I'd be like, how dare you speak to my friend Carmel like that? She's brilliant. She's this, she's that, the other. You shut your mouth and there may be violence involved. Whereas I will, not happily, but I will regularly say those things to myself, and I think we all do. And then maybe you have to learn to be your own best pal and leap in and defend you and cause a bit of trouble.
Yeah, I like that idea. Yeah, I agree.
Be kind to ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And in talking about this, what we're talking about now, it just makes me really think that all the characters in your books, they really, they go through these sorts of similar issues. Like, how do you approach writing them as well? Like, is it have you kind of just been developing them for a long time in your minds, or do you kind of start off like, does the character start off your story in that way, or do you plot it out afterwards?
Oh, I guess that's a good question. Is it like story first or characters first?
Yeah, because I think that what we've been talking about a lot is all about these, you've got all these amazing strong characters, but yeah, it's which kind of comes first for you guys when you're writing.
You go first.
Go first, Carmel, because I'm not sure what to say.
Oh, for me, it's easy for me. It's characters first every time. And actually, Greta Gale almost was the wife in, I think it was my fourth book, The Things I Should Have Told You, and that was about a family who go on a road trip in a camper van, and the couple, May and Ollie are the couple, the mum and dad, and they're on the point of divorce, and they go on this road trip in a camper van, and I wanted to put them in a very small space for 8 weeks with their kids, a teenage daughter and a young son. And I thought that would be like the melting pot. So they're either going to break up or make up in that small space. And so that was their story. But initially, Greta's character was actually the mum in that. And she was very overweight. And she had all of those negative images about herself. And it just didn't work for that particular story. And I didn't feel, I think I did 10,000 words where May was overweight and was this character. It was just wrong. So I stopped it. And it was kind of taken away from the important part of that novel. Was very much about a couple who were, should they stay together or not? What was right for their family? And so I went back to that. So Greta had been actually waiting for the right story to come along, and then it became the right one. In this particular story, it became the right one because I wanted to look at the whole issue of smoke and mirrors in the world that we live in, and pulling back the curtain and seeing the reality of what's really behind a photograph that goes on Instagram. So it kind of felt like the right story for her. But so definitely characters for me every time. And then after that, I would have a general idea of where the story should go, but the detail comes after the character for me.
Maybe it's a little bit of both for me. I mean, Carmel knows us because we work in a not dissimilar way. I don't plan huge amounts of my stuff. I tend to have a kernel of an idea, throw myself in and hope for the best. Worked so far. I think for me, it's the character definitely is what first will come to mind, but it's also their backstory. I think that each character in the cafe books in particular, and in the new one, maybe one day, they have a really quite powerful, not always happy backstory. So that it's kind of part plot and part character, because it is character, but it's also how did this person get to this point in their life. And quite often we'll join them in my books at a quite pivotal stage, and then it's a matter of like unpicking what had happened to them in the past and how that affects what they are in the present and how it affects their choices about the future. But definitely I would say character. I mean, I think you can I sometimes struggle with plot. I sometimes get so carried away with the characters and with the dialogue and the banter and just the fun, and then I'm like, oh bugger, I've written like 5 chapters and nothing's happened, because I've just been enjoying myself so much. So I do have to kind of like get a grip on myself sometimes and think, no, actually it's a story, it's not just a character study, but character's the most important.
I think I remember you saying, Debbie, for your new book, Maybe One Day, you had that scene in your head with the bar and the song. And I thought that was a really interesting, I remember like way before you even wrote it, you were like, I've had this scene, I really want to write it. This is the story
that's the last scene in the entire book.
I haven't given anything away.
No, you haven't.
No, sorry. I'm terrible for spoilers.
No, that wasn't.
And I also like, as in real life, when you meet people, we all make judgments whether we want to or not. You meet people and you're only seeing a fraction of them, aren't you, when you first meet them? And it's only as you get to know them better and friendships deepen and friendships develop, or not even friendships, just relationships develop, that you get to know what lies underneath and why they are like they are, why they say the things they say, do the things they do. And I think it's the same with for me, with characters in the books as well. You'll meet them and you'll be like, okay, so this is Laura from the Comfort Food Cafe, and this is why she's moved to Dorset. And then you kind of unpick the layers of that. And one of the most fun things to do when you're writing a book is actually just reveal those notes as you go through the book, so you know that people reading are going, oh,
Yeah.
and that explains why she's like this. So I really enjoy doing that as well.
Me too.
Definitely. That's great. That's really interesting. We've got some really lovely comments in the side as well, guys, which I'm going to pause to say. I love Christine saying, "Gosh, you lot are a tonic." Haha.
Oh, do you know what? I
A
don't
gin
think
and tonic.
I don't think I've ever been called a tonic before. That's absolutely down to you, ladies. But
Yeah,
day made. Thank you.
definitely.
Day made. Yeah.
So sweet. For our question here as well, which I'm going to bring up because I think this is a dumb question from Kathy, which is, do you have any recommendations on how to write realistic dialogue? I try to keep it natural, but I'm not sure I succeed. Thanks for any ideas.
First of all, you have to listen to people an awful lot. Most writers are really nosy people. We're absolute magpies. We're those people sitting quietly behind you on the tube or the bus, listening to the stories that you tell yourselves. Like Charlotte, last time we met at a pub, and I'd been sat outside listening to some people on the table next to me when one of the girls said to the other girl, "We had 15 shots," and the other girl said, "Shots of what?" She was like, "I don't know." And the other one was like, "What colour were they?" And they said that, and they had this whole conversation where they like tried to figure out what she'd had 15 shots of. It was such a brilliantly funny conversation. I just sat there quietly, minding my own business, then got inside and wrote it all down in my notebook. And I think, we are magpies. We steal bits of conversation. If you're including older people in your books, spend some time with older people. You've probably got some ready-made in your own family. Same with teenagers, children. Again, it's about authenticity. It's hard to know children if you don't spend any time with them. All of this stuff is a challenge. And another tip somebody gave me once, I can't remember who, but was to read that dialogue out loud and see if it sounds like something a real person would say.
100%. That's the best tip, I think, is the read out loud thing. And you speak. If you were to do a transcript of how I speak, and actually it's really interesting, you know the way on Facebook now people do videos and you can actually add that automatic transcript, and when the automatic transcript comes up, it reads really badly.
Oh, yes.
Like that's an example of how not to write dialogue, because what's happening is we do and we speak all over each other, and that doesn't read well. So you can't transcribe how we talk in conversations because it would read really badly. What you have to do is you have to listen, as Debbie said, read it out loud and use the most of it, and then leave out the ums and the ahs to a certain extent. Put the odd one in, but I'm
gonna add in here is that I know I'm biased, but like Debbie and Carmel are absolutely two of the best storytellers I've ever read. So their dialogue, one of the reasons I love their books and I've loved working with them is that sense of authenticity and that natural voice when the dialogue of your characters, the banter, the way they interact with each other, and there's a whole range of characters in there, old, young, from children to Edie in Comfort Food, who's like 90, 99, going on about 200, and actually like you have such strong voices. This is why readers love your book, and you write very different books, but I can see a similarity in what your readers say about you, because you have, it's just that absolute storytelling magic. So any writers and authors watching this, like the tips are fantastic, so listen carefully.
But I would say we're quite similar, Debbie. I could get that.
As you can tell. I would also say maybe like something that I do more now, now I write all the time, is when I watch TV shows or I read books, you spot yourself what works and what doesn't. So sometimes you can kind of reverse engineer that a little bit. That's just for the writing requests out there. I mean, if you read a book and something hits a bum note, you notice it straight away. And some of that's to do with dialogue, but some of it is actually to do with really knowing your character inside out. If you know your character as well as you know yourself or your best mate or your mum, if they put a foot wrong, if they say something that they wouldn't say, your inner voice will tell you. They'll say,
yeah, that's so true.
Say that. So I would say get a really good grip of your characters, so that they can inform you as well. It sounds really poncy, but it is kind of true. They do kind of grow and they take on a bit of a life of their own. And I think as writers and probably as editors reading the books, we've all come across something where we've gone, actually, do you know what? She wouldn't say that, or she wouldn't do that. And you have to really listen to that voice as well.
Yeah, I totally agree, Debbie. When I was at Mills and Boon, obviously those books are a lot shorter. They're about 50,000 words, but that means the authors have to get so much into a shorter space on the page. And one of the things that some authors did, or one of the things we used to advise writers as well, was actually before you start writing, come up with like a personality profile for your characters. So what do they like, what do they not like, where do they go shopping, what do they read, what do they watch on TV, what like what's their job, what were their qualifications, like even like go back to kind of like what was their childhood, how are they brought up, like all the like as exactly what you were saying, Debbie, like really know the ins and outs of your characters. They should be real people in your head. And I know a lot of writers say that.
I have a questionnaire.
They're not just cardboard cutouts, are they? I mean, it will be the same with Carmel. My characters have got a life of their own, and there's always that moment when you finish a book where you miss them. You actually miss them, and you find yourself thinking, what happened to them next? Or they're not in your life anymore. And I do miss my characters. I'm sounding like a complete psycho.
Not at all. But that's what do you then kind of do a whole sort of character profile on them before you get started, or like write a separate story about them in order to get so into those characters, or does it just percolate in your mind and you just
I'm a percolator myself.
I have actually a questionnaire that I ask all my characters. I've developed it. I do. It's quite a specific questionnaire. But I have, and it's not the usual. I'm not interested in asking them questions like, what is your name? What is your date of birth? Because all of that comes and you work all that out. But the kind of questions I ask are, do you believe in God? If yes, when you arrive at Heaven's Gate, what are you going to say? And it's just really interesting.
That's cool.
Things that come out because, like Rhea, who's in The Woman of 72 Derry Lane, Rhea is an agoraphobic and she's quite feisty, 60-year-old woman. But I asked her that question, and it was when I really understood her character, because she said, yes. When I get to heaven, I'll ask her. So she thought God was a woman, and I'll ask her, why did she do this to me? And it was just when she said that, it was kind of illuminating for me. And also some of the other questions I ask are, there's one that I ask, and I've shared this before too, but my husband and I have this thing. We say that if we've had a bad day, we have this imaginary bus, and the bus is sitting on the edge of a cliff, and we put whatever things that have gone wrong into the bus, and we literally get our toe and we tip this imaginary bus over the cliff. And sometimes people are put on the bus. Nobody's hurt in the making book, but it makes us feel better, and it's our punch bag.
That's excellent.
Yeah, it's a really good. It works for us.
I'd need a double decker.
Some days, Charlotte, I swear to God, some days a double decker wouldn't be enough. But I give my characters. So one of my questions for my characters is, who is on your bus? Right. So and the really interesting thing there is that some of the answers, I'll give you an example. But Retta in My Pear-Shaped Life said, "I am," and then that was really, it really broke me. And it's kind of almost like this. This is where we sound.
That's so
But when I know I'm really with a character is at the beginning of the writing process. I ask them these questions and they don't really answer me. But by the middle of the first draft, usually I ask them again. And I start getting answers. And by the end of the first draft, there's about 12 questions. I've got all the answers. And, there are questions like also, who would you bury your body for? Which I know makes me sound really dark, and I don't like dark stuff. But again, this is the thing, sometimes my brothers and sisters, we will say 3 a.m, you ring up and say, the body in the garden, you arrive with no questions, right? And then, it sounds dark, but it's a joke. The main thing is you're not really saying you're going to bury a body. You're saying no matter what,
you'll stick with them.
And I ask my characters that, who will you? And equally, sometimes they come back then and they say something really sad, and they'll say nobody, because there's nobody who in their life, and so they're the kind of questions I ask my characters, and they're just specific to me, and they work for me. I get a lot more from my characters by asking those than asking them what their favorite music is. Do you know, that kind of a way? It works for me.
Well, I guess it's very deep, psychological questions, really. So you find, you get right to the core of who they are.
Yeah, and like, what is your favorite curse word? I'm more interested in that than, and then somebody might say, I don't have one, that's fine. But others might say, well, I enjoy a good fork, maybe. So you can get your character, it's good.
I want to answer this. In fact, I want all 4 of us to answer these questions.
Yeah, you should.
Maybe not right now, but
I might start asking these of new people when I meet them.
Yeah. Who would you bury a body for? I always do.
You would bury a body for you.
Well, I think I was going to say I'd bury a body for you too. Maybe not Mel. No, I'm joking. I always ask which Harry Potter house you're in, or Game of Thrones house.
That's really good.
Harry Potter's a bit easier.
Harry Potter, Ravenclaw, apparently.
I was a Game of Thrones virgin. I'd never seen it, but lockdown, I've watched the complete series. I finished it.
Oh
my God!
Let's not talk about the last series.
No, but the last series is rubbish. But I feel like I need counselling. I didn't like the last episode, but that's another story. I won't get sidetracked. But
there were no one liked the last episode. There's a good example. Oh my God! We can totally loop this back. The last series of Game of Thrones, it are 2 writers who clearly didn't have their character profiles in their heads, or George's character profiles in their heads. Because the characters just did it. Every single person who watched that series, almost, they were just like, that character wouldn't have done that now, or that character wouldn't have done this, or that character wouldn't have done that, and it's like, guys, we should have written it.
It's hard, isn't it? Because I don't know if you've ever read the True Blood books by Charlene Harris.
Yes.
I really, really love those books, and then she did the last one, and Suki ended up with this certain person. I won't say who in case anybody's reading them. I don't want to spoil them.
Tall, tiny head, or the other one.
Charlotte,
you can't even identify that person from your description.
Pinhead.
No.
If you look at him carefully, he has a tiny head.
Anyway,
Very tall. Sorry.
And there was massive backlash from all the readers. They were like, Suki can't end up with him. She needs to be with X, Y, or Z, and all these other hot men that have been in it. And Charlene Harris just was replying saying, well, actually, Suki is my character, and I created her, and I know her better than any of you do. So therefore, she would end up with this guy. And it's an interesting sort of thing, isn't it? Certainly if you're a writer who is looking to become that successful and that have those many readers, there comes a point where your characters don't belong to you anymore. They also belong to...
I love that.
That's true.
I was saying about Game of Thrones, we all felt affronted at some of the things that those characters did because we felt like those characters had done that, And it's the same with books sometimes. You do get people who sort of say, well, are you sure that would have happened? And you're like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it would have happened. But, there's a crossover where once you put those characters out into the world, they belong to other people as well.
I love that. Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
Great. That's really interesting. Well, we've got some lovely more comments here and some more questions. So one from you, Debbie. What was your inspiration for the settings for your cafe series?
It was pretty straightforward, actually. Yeah. We went on holiday to Dorset, and which is where the cafe books are all set, and it was a really, really fab holiday. It was kind of those sometimes you go to a place and you just feel more. It's my husband.
Hi.
Outside in our tent, we've got a big tent in the garden, and that's like his escape hatch. So he just goes out there and he listens to podcasts by Peter Crouch, or he listens to cricket matches from 4 years ago. Melvin Bragg, apparently. Stuff that he finds soothing and relaxing. So he just stays outside in the tent and comes into, video bomb occasionally. But anyway, we went on holiday to Dorset, and it was just such a beautiful place. And we stayed in these lovely cottages that were called Langham Country Cottages, and they were like the inspiration for the rockery. And the whole area that around there is anybody who knows the area. I know Nikki's on, and she definitely knows the area, and it's so beautiful. It really is. It's, you know, I went there kind of expecting it to be like a sort of poor man's Cornwall, and I was very wrong, because it was just stunning. And we've been back loads of times since, and it was just, I found the landscape really inspiring. There's just something, I felt happy there. It was like one of those places you go that you feel immediately happy and relaxed. You can go to some places, can't you, and go, wow, this is gorgeous, but it doesn't feel like home. Whereas that place did, and still does, when we will get to go again, feel like home. So I sort of got back and just thought, well, I've always taken inspiration from holidays. I love my holidays. And what could I set there? Who can I send to go on an adventure? Yeah. And it kind of, you know, because I'm not from the West Country, I'm not a countryside person, I'm a proper city girl, always have been. So I wrote it from the perspective of somebody who was moving from Manchester down to Dorset, so she could see it through her eyes, through the eyes of city teenagers, which was funny, and a city person settling into a sort of a way of life in a small village in the countryside. So the inspiration was, just a holiday. I always do it. I came back from Turkey and wrote a book about Turkey. I'm just went to New York and wrote about New York. It's just a habit I've got, really.
Is like setting really important to both of you when you're writing?
Actually, Carmel helped me with my last one. In maybe one day, there's quite a few settings. There's some in England, but also took it over to Dublin and County Wexford, which Carmel helped me with, gave me some advice on settings there, and Cornwall and New York for that one. But I was sort of emailing Carmel saying, well, can you tell me somewhere somebody would go if they were looking for a place that was like this? And she sort of emailed back, you could try. So we kind of did that between us, really. And when I was there's a pub in there, Carmel, called O'Grady's.
Oh, yes! Oh my god! You know what? When I read it, that didn't register at all.
I kind of took it that. I took it that it was a compliment to me. I hoped it was.
For anyone who doesn't know, Carmel's maiden name is O'Grady.
Yeah, you couldn't get more Irish, could you, Carmel O'Grady?
Carmel O'Grady.
Yeah, if I hadn't met Rog, that's what I would have been writing as. For settings, for me, for the inspiration for settings, I'm a bit like Debbie. I write about places that interest me, and typically they're places I've visited. But sometimes I write about, like, again, in my pear-shaped life, right, I'd never been to this place, but I'd read somewhere about a place called Caucus City where they had the largest ball of twine in the world. And when I read that, I thought, that sounds absolutely bonkers, and I love it. I just loved the idea of how crazy that was, that a farmer had decided to make a big ball of twine. So I put that in the book, and then after I wrote, I wrote the first draft. The book involves a road trip across America, and my husband and I made the road trip to make sure it was authentic. And also, I wanted to really get into the emotion of the places that I had written about that I hadn't actually visited. And I was afraid the road trip was going to sound a little bit too much like a travel book, as opposed to what it should be about, which is the emotion that each place kind of evokes in the characters. But anyway, when we went to Caucus City, it was just one of the most amazing places I've ever been to. Middle of nowhere, took us a day to get to it in a snowstorm. And it was really a ghost town, because most people had left Caucus City because middle America, hit with recessions, had gone to the bigger cities. But this big, huge ball of twine was in the middle of it. It's just bonkers. And people drive for hours to go and stand beside the ball of twine and take a photograph beside it. And, I wrote a whole scene around it. I was so impressed by how crazy.
I love that. I love those crazy little things. This isn't really anything to do with the books, but I went to Portland in Oregon end of last year, and in Portland I'd read that there is the world's smallest park, which is believed to be for leprechauns.
Oh,
Liam, my boyfriend, is still fumes about it to this day, because I basically made us walk up and down this one area of Portland. Was it Portland or was it Seattle? No, it's definitely Portland, looking for this park, this leprechaun park.
Amazing.
I couldn't figure it out. We're like, this is exactly where it says, and I Google mapped it, and I was like, it should be here. And honestly, it was about 3 hours of our day looking for this park, and in the end, it was in the middle of the road, this dual carriageway, and it was like this big
Oh no.
a little patch of green with like a little sign, I think. And that was it. That's like
That's a Swiss.
and then I was like, oh wait, there it is. There it is.
That's a
This
Swiss.
tiny little park that is actually a home for leprechauns. But I don't care because I was still like, this is still awesome. And Liam was like, you've literally made us walk up and down a dual carriageway for nearly 3 hours to find a patch of grass.
See, the interesting thing about that
Yes.
is that's the kind of reaction that people should write. If you're for writers who are watching this, when you're looking at your setting, it shouldn't be about just describing a setting in a flat tone, like the sky is blue, the grass is green. But it's like, what about that setting? What emotion does that evoke in you? And for Liam, it was like, you've just made me walk for hours to find this. For Rob, like, Rob said to me when we drove to that Corca City, he was like, and it's actually on video because I was videoing it. He goes, only you, Carmel, could make me drive for hours to see a ball of twine. You know, he's like, only you. And I said, but isn't it amazing? He said, why in the world would anyone make this ball of twine? I said, why wouldn't they? That's the question, not why.
Yeah.
But that kind of ended up in the book because his reaction was hilarious, and I kind of gave that actually to Greta. And
yeah, you did.
Ray's book was a bit like me. He was like, oh, I love it, Roadside Curiosities. But I think what you do when you're writing settings it's not enough to you've got to describe them beautifully because we need the gorgeous clothes, but you also have to show the emotion that setting evokes in your characters, whether it's negative or positive, really. That's the tip.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And again, it goes back to the characters, how that is at the heart of it. So it really is your book.
Absolutely.
It's how your setting and your plot, but it's always how it relates to the characters at the end. Love that. I've got another question here from Kathy, which I'll bring up, which is, you mentioned making a note in your books to reference later. I'm hopeless with my notebook. How do you organise your notes as you develop a book?
I again, due to my chronic inability to plan, I'd love to give you a proper answer to this, but the answer is it's a little bit chaos. The notebooks I'm really good with. We always have a notebook on the go in the family where I write down the hilarious things that my family has said. And they end up in a lot of my books. All of Lucy from The Birthday That Changed Everything and Lizzie and Nate from the Cafe books, they're all based on the rascals that I share a house with. So I have that notebook. I wish I had it with me, actually. I'd read you some examples. If I get time, I'll go and get it. Yeah, and I can read you out some of the comments. But plot-wise, Kathy, I just make notes wherever. The back of beer mats, crisp packets, whatever. I'm not a good person to ask that question. Carmel's got a proper notepad there. She'll answer this one better.
Well, I was just showing off a bit actually because this but my notebook says Carmel's Notions. Can you see it?
Ooh.
Because if you know me, you know that I'm fond of the word notions, and I love the word notions. And
it's a great
if you
word.
have anybody, the Irish people watching this, or if you know anyone from Ireland, you'll know that we use the word notions a lot. And usually it's said to someone in not a positive way. It's like, you accuse someone of having notions, which means they've got these ideas above where they should be. And Irish mammies are notorious for saying to their children not to be having notions about themselves. And I certainly grew up in a house where I was told not to have notions. But thankfully, I didn't listen to her, and I had all of the notions, which is why I'm writing today. Because if I hadn't have had notions, I would have never got a book published. But my friend, Catherine Ryan Howard, is another one, she got this notebook for me and put Carmel's Notions on it. And this is my current notebook, which is half full, and it's just full of... So exactly as Debbie said, like if anything hits me, I will always have this in my handbag or close to hand. But what I would say for organizing, this is the best thing I've ever bought. I bought that software package called Scrivener, whichever way you pronounce it. But it was the best money I ever spent because, again, like Debbie, I'm not a plotter. I'm kind of a pantser. But what I do is as I think about a scene, and it may not be relevant to what I'm writing, I can actually set a folder. And you need to see it. If you go onto YouTube, it'll show you tutorials. But I can actually set a folder, and the title of that file can just literally be Carmel Talks About Notions. But it will just prompt me, and then you can actually write a couple of lines. So I do that, and it means that every idea I have, even if it doesn't work in the current piece I'm writing, I can kind of get to. So it keeps notes. I also can add in links to the internet. I can add in photographs. So if I see something, like writing My Pear-Shaped Life, because there was a lot of the road trip I took photographs of like that ball of twine and stuff like that, and I had it all in Scrivener. So when I was writing a scene, I could kind of use that. I remember once in one book.
Sorry, guys, I'll be right back.
Yeah, no problems. I remember writing in, I think, it was 1,000 Roads Home, and I was writing a scene about a sunset, and I actually opened up YouTube, and on YouTube somebody had filmed a sunset because everything's on YouTube. So I wrote the scene in Scrivener with the YouTube clip playing of sunset coming up, so I could actually really kind of say what the colours were, because I was a little bit too lazy to get up and go to the beach at 4 or 5 in the morning, but someone else had done it for me, so I was actually able to write that because someone had gone and filmed that on YouTube. So, but Scrivener is a great place. All of those links, you can throw them in, and then when you need to use them. So it's a good place to get organised if you want to get organised.
Sorry, I have to disappear then because the window cleaners are here. The window cleaners are here. And what happens is that my two dogs, ladies met earlier, my two dogs hate the window cleaners. Like they're lovely dogs, but they want to kill the window cleaners. I don't know. They must have had
Betty does.
Must have had a bad experience with a window cleaner.
No, I think Betty wants to kill the window cleaner as well. Oh, hi.
So I had to tell Dom not to let the dogs in the garden, because if the window cleaners came over, then we might have some unpleasant incidents, including involving window cleaners and their bottoms. So it's chaos here. I've literally got kids streaming past me because I told you I'm in the hallway next to the toilet and the kitchen. So I'm actually sitting in my house's equivalent of Piccadilly Station. So I'm kind of like feel professional and amusing. And there's kids, there's dogs, there's husbands.
Which actually, I was wondering, actually, for the question for both of you, how has writing kind of gone in lockdown? Have you found it challenging, or has it been okay, or how?
I found it really easy. I just decided not to do any. I am overdue on a book, and I was about just over halfway through it, and normally for me that would be like the end straight. I'm like, oh, gallop towards the finishing line now, but then all of this happened, and I'm quite a sort of I think most people who write, most people who are authors have got really vivid imaginations. It's part of the job description. And one of the ways we use that is that we can like imagine scenarios and put our characters into what if situations. But unfortunately, in the real world, that has a flip side. Certainly for me, can't speak for all writers, where that vivid imagination can turn against you really, and that heightens anything that makes you anxious can be really, really heightened. I mean, the sort of lying in bed at 3 a.m. thinking, who will love my children? What songs will they play at my funeral? How will I pay the mortgage? Literally, I mean, every worry you could possibly have is heightened by a situation like this. So I found that there's been very little clarity in my mind. And I keep trying, because I keep thinking, this is perfect. I've got a fictional world where people do what I tell them. And I have a world I can control where there's no government making me furious, and there's not, tens of thousands of people dying and people I know aren't passing away. But I just can't do it. It just feels a little bit, personally speaking, like that part of my brain is broken. So it's not been the best. I've been trying to do other stuff, like do promotion and chat to people and, do research maybe, bits and bobs like that. But the actual... the joy of the writing, that has kind of put itself into lockdown for the time being for me. And hopefully I'll get my mojo back soon, because otherwise I'm going to die destitute and alone.
No, you always have us, Debbie.
We'll be there with our shovel. We'll be there with our shovel to help you out. Make sure you're not. I've actually been writing away. I've been writing, Debbie. Like, I mean, I have to say, like, I've had a lot of the same thoughts as you've had. Like, I've worried. Nate, my son, he's asthmatic, and so like he worries me all the time. And I'm like, literally, we've been cocooned here in our house, and we haven't really gone anywhere. We haven't been anywhere for like 3 months, and for nearly 4 months now. And because I'm terrified that he'll catch COVID and his little lungs would be compromised. But having said that, for me, my escape for all of this, I've been homeschooling. Roger's working from home. It's chaos. But how I get through it is I write, and it's actually been my salvation. So I finished a novel throughout lockdown.
You did?
Yeah, I did. I finished the novel, and then, but one of the things I do, like, this has been my salvation. I've learned how to write with my headphones, and these are actually really lovely. The Once Upon a Time book club, or an American book club, and they chose A Thousand Roads Home last year, but they took a quote from my book and put it on headphones and gave it to their readers.
Such a good.
Really.
What does it say, Carmel? I can't read it.
Everyone has a story if you take the time to listen, and that's a quote. I wrote that.
I love that quote.
So Tom in A Thousand Roads Home says that, and they took it out and put it on headphones. And all of the members of their book club, 1,600 of them, have these. I just find that really cool. So any of these are my
I
headphones.
think that's really cool.
But
It's a good job you have those notions, isn't it?
Notions, like literally, I have all the notions. And I should be
People who don't have notions don't get
proud.
headphones with their quotes on.
I think this is it. Like literally, I think everyone should have a pair in the world, really. You know? But no, but what I've learned to do is I've learned to write with headphones, and I have every time I write a book, I create a soundtrack for that book.
Yeah.
And I can now, when I started off to write, I was one of these people who went, "Oh, I need complete silence, darling, to write," and I really felt I did. But then I had kids, and I realized that was a load of rubbish. Like literally, in order for me to write and actually complete a book and hand it into Charlotte once a year, I needed to learn to write with the noise. Because children aren't quiet, and it's not fair to ask them to be quiet. It's just not fair. So what I did is I put my headphones on and put my soundtrack on, and there's, as I said, a specific song that will always work on loop. And it's like a muscle in my brain now. When I hear that song, I start to write, and the words really fly out. So the book I've just finished writing, it was all about 80s power ballads. So there's a lot of Celine and Whitney and Britney, and it's like hilarious, you know. But anyway, that works for me.
It's good, by the way.
Sure it is.
I've been
What's it
about
That
third
was
of the way through.
my question for you both, which I think might have to be our final question, because
I've still got a quart of my gin to go.
Just well, we could keep going. I'm just aware of other people's lunch hours, but I think that we could just keep chatting. But my question was, can you tell us what you're both working on now?
This bottle of wine. My one that I'm struggling to write is about a group of people who don't know each other, but when you're on holiday and you see the same people around the resort, or you'll see them in the restaurant, or you'll go on an excursion, they'll be on your coach, that kind of casual holiday acquaintance. It's about a group of people on a holiday in Mexico where something outrageous happens, a big thing happens that just impacts the rest of their lives. So it's about how one quite extraordinary event can kind of ricochet through people's lives, and how they deal with that in the small ways, the big ways, and all the little ways in between. I can't tell you any more than that because I haven't finished writing it yet.
Fantastic.
Sounds really cool though.
Oh, I can't wait to read that. I love Debbie's books. She's one of my go-to authors that I always buy a Debbie book, and I'm lucky that I usually get one in advance, but I always buy a copy as well because she's one of those authors. Totally, yeah, no, you're one of my go-to authors every time. And I know that when I read a book, or I'll do this, I'll be doing my nodding along because I recognize myself in your characters, but also they feel better. And I do think one of the things that ties all of Debbie's books together, she's great at writing the what ifs. Do you know what I mean? And I always find that when I read a book, in particular in our last book, to me, I feel like that everybody has like a box of something in their attic with a what if in it, and I just feel that book, and for anybody who's ever had a what if in their life, they have to read that book. It's
absolutely.
So beautiful. Loved it.
So what about your next one, Carmel?
Had to say that. What am I writing? Oh, well, I'm just finished because I'm the star pupil, Debbie. I have been writing.
Just finished, delivered.
I wrote a book throughout lockdown. Did I mention that I wrote a book throughout lockdown? Did I mention?
I'm not burying that body for you anymore.
The book. In fairness, I had like half of it written before all of this madness started, so I was in the story. And I've said this. I think if I had to start from scratch, I'd find it really hard because there's too many distractions. But I was already in the characters' lives. This story is actually different for me, is that it's set in New York. So all of my books usually start in Ireland and then go somewhere or stay in Ireland. Some of them go elsewhere. But this one, it's the opposite. It's actually around an Irish-American family who live in New York. And I really wanted to look, the central theme is around immigration. And I was really interested at looking at the Irish diaspora there. And I'm the daughter of immigrants. My mother is English, my father's Irish. And so I've lived in England and I've lived in Ireland. So I kind of understand what it's like to feel that sense of place. No matter where I live, I've always felt Irish, whether I was living in London and going to the Irish pubs there or here in Wexford. But for the characters in this book, the storyline is that the central character B, who is the daughter of an Irish immigrant, she receives a letter in the post on New Year's Eve, and it was a letter she wrote to her future self 20 years previously as part of a school project. And when she opens up this letter to her future self, it kind of opens up all sorts of cans of worms, and it makes her begin to question everything in her life because of the things that she had written in that letter about her friendships, about her family, and about her life. It makes her question all of those, and she kind of goes on a bit of a journey to find answers to that question. And as she does, it means that she has to ask questions of her parents. And she her mother has died. Her mother's Irish, and you learn this from page 1. There's no spoiler there, but she goes to Ireland. So in this case, she's coming home to Ireland to try and find her mother's family. That's what the story is. So it's about friendship, and it's about yourself, your sense of place in the world, and what makes you identify as where you're from, like as your nationality, whether you're born with it, where you live. Is it about family stories? Like, what is it?
Yeah.
I've got one tiny thing to say before we go, and it was just to kind of like anybody watching, any readers, writers, thank you so much for watching. But I just wanted to say that both Debbie and Carmel are incredibly hard workers, and they've both written 2 amazing books that just were in the works for 2 years prior to them publishing, and they both published during the pandemic, which meant that bookstores were shut. Not couldn't actually get to Ireland for Carmel's book. Debbie, I know you'll have had similar issues. All the events we had planned, all the hard work, everything was cancelled. And if you love the sound of these books, they are amazing. These are 2 incredibly talented women. Please support them, because it just would mean so much. It really would.
We've
that's my bit.
We've got loads of children and dogs we have to feed. Please support us.
But you just don't, does it just works so hard, and things happen in the world as they do in your books. And every review or on Amazon, or every ebook you buy or paperback, or it really does help, and they've worked so hard. And you won't regret it, because they're amazing books.
Exactly.
They really will make you feel a million times better in really hard times, and that's why books like Debbie's and Carmel's are so important, and why I will always champion them.
Yeah,
thank you.
Definitely, Charlotte, and exactly, just keep yourself in these time.
We got published on the same day, so we were going to do things together.
We were. Yeah, we're so looking forward to it. We had so many.
It's the first time we were published on the same day, but it's maybe not this year.
But next year, we'll do it next year.
Next year, and
we're doing well.
Exactly. We were all healthy, and that's the most important thing. But any way you can support will be very, very appreciated.
Yeah,
we both started with Charlotte. This is the interesting thing. Maybe some of you watching this will know this, but we both started off as digital authors with One More Chapter, and then we've moved on. And I've gone into Harper Fiction, and Debbie's gone on to Orion. But we started off together pretty much at the same time. I was one of the first of the gang in One More Chapter, as Harper Impulse as it was. And so we understand what it's like to kind of we started. I think we'll always, Debbie, as a result. It kind of gives us a bit of a connection, isn't it? Because we then moved out of that at the same time. So
my little book babies that flew the nest. Come back holidays.
It's exciting. Yeah, we do. You can't get rid of us.
It's so great.
You can't get rid of us. Those early books, they're such hard. I always say that my little Harper Impulse books, or One More Chapter books as they are now, they're such hard-working books. I love that they're finding readers still, and that people still read them. And I'm so proud of those books that I wrote in that that time. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's so great that, now you're both, I know that you're saying that you were planning some events together, but at least, we all got to chat together here, which is
thank you so much, guys.
so fun. So
a great idea. Thank you for doing this, because it's been really lovely to see, well, all of you guys as well.
Yeah. I know, and we could keep talking forever and ever, but maybe we'll just have to do another one in another couple of weeks. And then
yeah, maybe that would be a great idea.
Anytime.
Then we can keep chatting.
We can do my author questionnaire. I can put you, in the actor's studio, in the author studio. I can put you through your paces now.
Yeah.
I'll do the questionnaire.
I'm a bit scared of that.
Debbie is like, she'll need a